The falsifying of my driver's license? Yes. And the fraud of the dissolution of marriage? Yeah. And the persecution of police and sheriff's departments that refuse? See, there is going to be a reason for presumptively invalid. Yes. And I'm going to set that precedent setting case where if you refuse to enforce the civil rights of American citizens, yeah, the following are presumptively invalid reasons. A valid reason, yes, is having prior contact with law enforcement officers, yes, that arrested you for the false accusation of being in a city. Now, that's going to change the juries of every state of the United States. Ouch. Because I'll sue each and every Supreme Court that has any knowledge of this. Now, it's not just prior contact. Yes, it's the fact that law enforcement refuses to acknowledge the civil rights of Americans. Yes, that obligates me to apply for asylum in other nations. Yeah, because of the persecution that I've had to endure for the last 7 years. Ouch! Now, expressing a distrust of law enforcement. Obviously, I distrust you. Yes. I don't want to get arrested again. I don't want to go to jail. Yes. And I want my rights enforced so that I can live with my sons. Yes. Yes. And then I could speak to Marilyn as another American citizen because of the documenting of the fraud of her husband's involvement in obstructing my rights as a citizen. Now, if you could go ahead, I'd like it if you would make arrangements for that to take place today, because I'll change the rules in every Supreme Court of the United States. Now, there is some concerns that I have about these state parties. Yeah. Just kind of looking through at the state parties, yes, known as the individual nations. There's what's known as trafficking in persons. Now, there's Article number 3 for the purpose of this protocol. Yes, it's one of those United Nations conventions. Oh, trafficking in persons shall mean the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat of use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, of the abuse of power or position of vulnerability, or the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person, yes, having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Now, usually they think of this as prostitution, but when I think of my son's athletic ability and me finding out they were in the wrong grades, yeah, I thought they were being exploited by the Quilcene football team. Oh. Now you're being sued for trafficking in children, yes, where you use the coercion of the abduction, the fraud of protection orders and dissolutions of marriage, yes, the deception of false arrest and false imprisonment, yeah, and the abuse of power as individual judges of the United States. You're getting sued for trafficking in the 5 minors named. Yes. You had no jurisdiction in 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2015. I want them in my custody. Yes, I want them residing with me. And if they are unable to play football, that's going to be the cost of the lawsuits that you're going to receive. Now, exploitation shall include, at a minimum, the exploitation of the prostitute of others or other forms of sexual exploitation. Yes, forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. Yes, this is the minimum. The maximum of exploitation is the intentional abduction of children. Yes, using the fraud of courts. Yes, so that my wife could get paid. All right, so that they could play football. That would be the maximum of the exploitation of my 5 sons. Now let's see. The consent of a victim of trafficking in persons to the intended exploitation set forth in paragraph A of this article shall be relevant where any of the means set forth in paragraph A, yes, has been used. The recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a child, yes, for the purpose of exploitation shall be considered trafficking in persons. For the 5 minors named that you issued a protection order for, yes, as protection for, yes, you never had any jurisdiction of law. Child shall mean any person under age 18. Now, I know Zachary's going to turn 18 next year. Yes. But for the last 8 years, 4 months and 1 day, phew, you've exploited my sons. You've neglected and abused them. Now, each state party known as the United States of America shall ensure, yes, that its domestic, legal, or administrative system contains measures that provide to victims of trafficking persons in appropriate cases information on relevant court and administrative proceedings. This is the international convention where I, as their father, yes, will have information on each and every lawsuit against every individual. Yes, he does. State party, known as the United States of America, the executive, judicial, and legislative branch of this great nation, and then assistance to enable their views and concerns to be presented and considered at appropriate stages of criminal proceedings against offenders. Yes, in a manner not prejudicial to the rights of the defense. Yes. Now, when applying for asylum in other nations, that 10% rule, yes, I have the right to use a judicial system. How are you today?